Can you describe a time that your company only discovered that you were irreplaceable after they fired you? How did you feel? What did they do? I wasn't irreplaceable at all, but I quit being a dishwasher, and within a month I was being begged by the owner to come back because they just hired 3 horrible replacements who all got fired within that time period. I just thought it was hilarious. I worked as a dishwasher for around 5 years. At the first restaurant we went from having 5 dishwashers on staff to just myself in the span of about 2 months. For the next month and a half I worked 6 days a week from 4 p.m. close. When I told them I'd found another position that required half the responsibility while paying $2/HR more as well as being MF straight days, they asked if there was any way I'd stay. Not a bloody chance in hell. Worked as a guitar tutor for some small-time local music school. I was there early every shift to set up equipment and I wrote the lead guitar tuition book. I got bombarded with so many students I decided to try moving some of them onto bass guitar, which some did. Now we needed a bass tutor, so I interviewed and hired one. I did all this while my boss listened to his iPod, smoked his cigarettes, and made the occasional cup of tea. He literally did nothing remotely close to work. This bass tutor was a twat. He was all smiles and polite during interview. Had some kind of issue with me ever since I said I didn't like the belts. Nothing wrong with them, it's just not my kind of music. He bent my boss's ear for months slagging me off, basically because he wanted his friend to work there instead. One day, we were at the end of a session and we were doing the band play. The students we had would play together in a band covering whatever songs we had prepared. My boss, clever as he was, decides he wants to cover a song that none of us knew. So I piped up and said that we can't do it because we haven't even heard it before. He throws a wobbly and storms out. At the end of the day, he tells me I'm not needed anymore, that I'm unreliable, that I never show up for work. WTF is he talking about? And that it's best if we part ways. Fine by me, you silly bollock. Got another job and a month later he calls me asking me to come back to work because he needs an extra set of hands. I said no and explained I had a new job. Spoke with an ex-coworker about it and he said that basically once it gone, none of my students wanted to keep it up anymore. No one was there to set up the equipment on time and his business fell apart very fucking quickly. Lol. Not me but my uncle. So he was a welder, an underwater one, and he complained that his salary should be higher. Company says no. Next month, my uncle tried again, still got rejected. This happens for 34 months until the boss couldn't handle it anymore. My uncle was fired. The next month he got a job offer that gave him quadruple the amount of the salary from the previous company. He instantly got promoted to senior welder because apparently not many people can weld underwater. So yeah, his bank account needs to be confirmed because of the pay amount was so huge the bank afraid that he is stealing some sh*t. Meanwhile the previous company tried to hire him back, but my answer is the same as yours when I asked for a raise. Edit. Thanks for the upvotes fam. I've showed this to my uncle and he laughs as hard as he could because he just met his ex-boss just now when he went to the market. There's a total of only 3,380 commercial divers in the entire United States. And only about 1,000 of those work in heavy industry or construction, which are most likely to be underwater welders. Your uncle is one of the rarest workers in America. That boss was dumb as shit. Not me, but someone I worked with. The company we worked at was nationwide. Originally they had about 80 stores. *ONE*** guy was in charge of processing orders. Individual stores did their own ordering, but the orders had to go through head office and be consolidated into large orders from individual companies. The guy that did this also had to make predictions for how much stock to order in advance for New Year's, Christmas, etc. The company bought a smaller chain of 40 stores. Now we had 120 stores. The guy kept up. Another chain bought. Now we had 180 stores. Ordering guy was starting to feel the pressure. He asked for assistance and was denied. Each time he was told it's just another XXX stores. You can do it. He was also denied a pay rise. 10 years passed, and now we have over 400 stores, from a start of 80. Ordering guy is now a chain smoking wreck. He's gone grey in the face and has a nervous tremor in his hands. He says things like "I gotta get out of here" constantly, almost every day. Companies still refuse to give him any assistance or pay rise. In fact, each time we increase numbers, they became less likely to give him anything because the relative size increase was smaller. By the time we got to 400 plus stores and they added another 40, they just politely laughed off his requests for help. After all, it was only a 10% increase. Finally, not long before Christmas, ordering guy snaps and quits. The company advertises for a replacement and is unable to get one for the money they were paying him. They increase the offer and get several guys who try for a week or so and then quit. Finally, they create a new department with a manager and 2 assistants to replace the one guy they refuse to assist or give a pay raise. Total cost is almost 4 times the price of the original guy. A year or so later, I ran into the original guy and could not believe how well he was looking. He'd given up smoking. His face was no longer grey. His tremors were gone. I told him he looked years younger. And he did. He was relaxed and happy and had a new job. I was a warehouse and shipping manager for a small online company. Was fired as an example to the rest of the staff for looking at Facebook at work. Literally nobody else knew how to do my job, and I had it streamlined down to an art form. Immediately after firing me, they tried to hire me to train my replacement. A couple of months later, the owner asked for me to come back permanently because they had to hire 3 people to replace me and they still weren't keeping up. They were shocked that I had found new employment and a pay raise to boot. By then, I was an IT trainer for a university. The head of my department decided that no one needs training on software because programs are easy to learn and people should just be able to figure things out. So I was made redundant. 3 months after I went, lo and behold, they are trying to recruit an IT trainer because software is not easy for everyone. I wasn't fired, but quit because I wasn't being paid enough. I have been emailed several times in the past few years with job offers. The offers are actually not bad, but I'm back in college and my job after college will be much better. The experience did back up some advice that I've heard on here. It's easier to move to a different company for higher pay than it is to get a reasonable raise. Keeping that in mind for when I start working again. Edit, spelling. I told my boss I was leaving, but I wanted to give a 2-month notice so I could help hire and train the new person. He yelled at me and threw me out of the office. The next day he called because he didn't know the codes to get into the office. I was being nice and told him and reminded him I'm willing to help hire the next person and train. Again, he denied me. During the day he kept calling me asking me how to do stuff. I didn't answer, so they all went to VM. I could hear his voice getting annoyed and more angry. The final message was him screaming at my VM telling me I've ruined his business. I enjoyed hearing the voice emails, but then he started emailing me, which I saved. Finally, after a couple weeks it stopped. Then 3 months later he asked if I would come back at less pay. It's been 8 years since I left that job, and every year or so he'll reach out to me and offer me my old job at less pay. Well, they fired me because I don't do anything. I was a developer. Simply put, I worked alone, and coding is not a process when you constantly just type. So sometimes I lurked on Reddit when my code was compiling. Some douche saw it, so it got me fired. I was devastated, not because the fact that I wouldn't get any job somewhere else, but because of the sudden change, and I had to replan a lot of stuff. 2 weeks later they called and asked if maybe I wanna go back. The people who took my projects had no clue what to do, and it was starting to crumble. They offered more money, of course. I laughed. I had another job that time, for a bit more pay than the callback sum. It was really hard not to tell them to go fuck themselves, but a professional developer never loses his shit. Not to me, but my brother. My brother was an operator for some oil company. Every month, they would send him to Africa to work on one of the oil derricks in the ocean, and the company flew their workers out to them via helicopter instead of boats. With a rise in robots and machines, the company began to lay off several of their workers, and my brother was one of them. He was depressed at first because the pay was really good. He basically got the month off every other month, and they paid him during his month off. But he got over it and found work for another oil company. A couple of months later, the company calls him and told him that they needed more employees and that they would pay him more if he would return, but they didn't specify why they were short on employees. My brother found this suspicious and decided to do some research, and it turns out that the company had a lot of their helicopters crash into the ocean with few survivors, and when he found out, he refused the job, but the company kept calling him and offering him offers. They would stop after he told him he would sue them or something like that if they called him again. When I found out about this, I asked him if all of those helicopters didn't crash, would he have agreed to work, and he said no, because he didn't like being away from his family from long periods of time. He would occasionally get sick because his body was constantly adjusting to different climates and temperatures. Food was very expensive in Africa for an American, and each time he was constantly getting tested for disease. When he returned to America, wow, you made it to the end. Mom would be proud. Thanks for watching. You can show your support by liking and subscribing to my channel. Turn on the notification bell to be notified whenever a new video pops up. Have a nice day.